Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Geo Connect Asia Panel session. SLA and GeoWorks are pleased to work with Geo Connect Asia 2021 as knowledge partner for its leading event in March 2021. We are pleased to invite the team to organize an hour panel session, a sneak preview of Geo Connect Asia on geospatial technologies, a catalyst for sustainable infrastructure development. Hereby, I would like to welcome Mr. Rupert Owen, who is the co-founder and event director of Geo Connect Asia, to start today's session. Mr. Owen, please.
Good morning from the Geo Connect Asia team in London. Thank you, Vanessa, for the introduction and for the opportunity to organize a webinar as part of the very impressive Singapore Geospatial Week. We're delighted to be partnering with the Singapore Land Authority and GeoWorks. With 6 months to run before, we're now planning for the main Geo Connect Asia event to be staged on the 24th and 25th of March in Singapore. Subject to the evolving regulatory environment for running events, this will combine a face-to-face exhibition and a set of conferences in a variety of formats. We're very pleased to have been receiving increasing support for the event, including that of Trimble, our platinum sponsor. The aim of Geo Connect Asia is to offer a platform to place geospatial and location intelligence at the heart of Southeast Asian decision-making across government and enterprise. Key verticals, including agriculture and forestry, asset management, building and construction, mining, logistics and transportation, maritime, real estate, smart cities, utilities, and of course, infrastructure. Many of these are at the earlier stages of digitalization, and much of the focus is on the cross-fertilization of ideas across industries, but also influencing owners and policymakers. The interaction between geospatial platforms and new technologies, including artificial intelligence, augmented reality, blockchain, IoT, quantum computing, remote sensing, UAVs, and virtual reality, amongst others, is an essential part of the thought leadership-led process we're taking. By bringing in the Digital Construction Asia and UAV Asia themes, the focus of Geo Connect Asia is ground up and sky down. The selection of today's topic reflects the focus on infrastructure build-out to stimulate economic activity across the region, but also the need to incorporate strong principles associated with sustainability, resilience, and livability. We're very fortunate to have been able to attract a great panel of experts today, moderated by Dan Bishton, who is Sydney-based and editor of Position magazine. Dan's experience in the region includes 3 years in Phnom Penh in the role of managing editor and project manager for Open Development Mekong, a localized open portal, data portal for the lower Mekong countries. I would also like to welcome our first three panelists based in Singapore, Ms. Argoon Chuang, Digital Transformation Lead of AECOM Southeast Asia, Ms. Farizan de Moran, Senior Partner at GreenA Consultants, Mr. Jerry Ong, President of AFLAG, the ASEAN Federation of Land Surveying and Geomatics. And from Chennai, I'd like to welcome Raj Turai, Technical Business Development Director, South Asia, Bentley Systems. We hope you enjoyed today's event and feel free to engage with questions. Dan, I'd like to hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction, Rupert. I'm very pleased to be here and I'm eagerly anticipating today's discussion. Thank you also for assembling such a diverse and talented panel. Though Position and Spatial Source are primarily focused on Australia and New Zealand, we engage with our Asia-Pacific neighbours very regularly. And I hope that my experience of living in Southeast Asia and working on a project focused on sustainable development in the region may give me a unique perspective. I'd like to ask each panelist to give a short self-introduction, please. So can we begin with you, Jerry?
Thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jerry Ong. On behalf of the Singapore Institute of Surveyors and Valuers, SISV, I serve as the national rep to ASEAN flag and was elected to the office as president. I'm privileged to be representing our profession within the ASEAN region. Allow me to introduce the ASEAN flag. The ASEAN flag, or Federation of Land Surveying and Geomatics, was established in 15 March 1995. We are a recognized ASEAN NGO, and in line with ASEAN's regional and collaborative trust, we are engaged with various ASEAN dialogue partners and even having close collaboration with our fellow professionals within the Asia Pacific region. The key aims and objectives of ASEAN Flag was to serve as a focal point for exchange of ideas related to land surveying, geomatics profession within the ASEAN region, along with our dialogue partners. This includes practitioners from both public and private sectors, academia, and universities as well. And also to cooperate with national and international organizations to support and supplement their works. The role of ASEAN Flag includes assisting competent authorities within the ASEAN states in capacity building and institutional strengthening. Also to assist to establish professional institutions, to set up regulatory and licensing registration systems, to provide assistance in training within the domains practice, and keeping current with the latest technologies, standards, and practices within and beyond our profession and industry. So our ASEAN Flag activities include regular council meetings. We meet 3 times a year, and each council meeting is accompanied by a full-day technical seminar within the host country. We also have continual professional development programs, and during such CPDs, the latest technology sharing and demo sessions from vendors, and also a deeper dive into user application workshops takes place. And they also include technical visits. One of the flagship events of our Southeast Asia ASEAN Flag is the Survey Congress. Our first Survey Congress was held in 1979 in Singapore. The last Survey Congress, as Daniel correctly put, a close collaboration with our Asia Pacific partners, was held in Darwin and jointly hosted by SSSI, and we are very thankful for that very close collaboration we have with our partners. The next upcoming Survey Congress will be held in Indonesia, the city of Bandung, in August. Lastly, one of the key roles within ASEAN Flag is to promote the profession. And ASEAN Flag has been given a mandate by the ASEAN Secretariat to assist in competent authorities for mutual recognition arrangement. And this is to facilitate the flow of professional services within our region. That will be all from me, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. Argoon, could I ask you to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Thank you, Daniel. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Argoon Chuang. I lead the digital engineering team for our AECOM Southeast Asia region. And AECOM is we're leading a digital engineering consultants behind many high-profile infrastructure and building projects. I myself is a civil engineer by training. However, ever start from the beginning of my professional career, I'm always at the digital side in the building and construction industry, which essentially it means use whatever digital means to help our project teams to deliver our outcomes faster and better. So in the past around 18 years, I've been having the titles from computer programmer, GIS specialist, BIM manager, R&D manager, and now it's the digital transformation lead. And it's all about, although title is different, but it serves the same duty, which I summarize in one sentence is to make the process better. The process means the design and construction process for the buildings and infrastructure, and better means smoother, faster, less human errors, and more precise, and so on and so forth. One last interesting aspect about myself. I'm personally from Taiwan, but I worked in Hong Kong and China for more than 12 years before I came to Singapore 1.5 years ago. So I was lucky enough to participate in many high-profile building and infrastructure projects in that 12 years, including 5 new lines in Hong Kong and many landmark tall buildings in China. It's really a fantastic period of time being in that region. And for now, it's always interesting to me comparing the difference and the similarity between Hong Kong and Singapore, Southeast Asia and Greater China, the difference in terms of the approach, the regulation, the culture, and the similarity, and so on and so forth. It's beyond the job. It's quite an interesting part of my current position. And beyond the job, it's always make me very excited, and I enjoy that a lot. So that's all about me. Hand over back to you, Daniel.
Fantastic. Thank you, Argoon. Raj, could I ask you to introduce yourself now?
Thank you, Daniel and Rupert, for the start of this nice conference. And it's a virtual. That's great, and I'm pleased to be part of this in a conference, and also it's part of the Singapore Geospatial Week, which is actually exciting for me to be part of, along with SLA and the GeoWorks team. So I'm based out of Chennai, which is in India, southern part of India. And I've been working with the Bentley system for the last 17 years. And my current role is doing the technical business development activities. Talking about Bentley, it's a leading global provider of software solutions to engineers, architects, geospatial professionals, constructors, and owner-operators for the design, construction, and operations of infrastructure. And Bentley's microstation-based engineering and BIM applications and its digital twin cloud services, advanced project delivery, and the asset performance of transportation and other public works, utilities, industrial, and resource plans, and commercial and institutional facilities. And Bentley is spanned across the globe, having close to 70 offices spread across 40 plus countries. And our vision is to actually be the leader in providing infrastructure softwares, sustaining the environment as well as profession and the society. And my role started with a geospatial specialist in Bentley, and moved on to professional services business with Bentley, covering civil and geospatial for some time. And then I moved on to doing the user success advisory program, where the key is to basically work with our users, understand their problem, and make sure they are successful in utilizing our software to make the best out of them. And also I've been the part of digital advancement team, working with the users to understand their workflows and current processes, and see what improvements can be achieved in terms of their overall workflows and processes, in order to gain in terms of reducing the time at which they do the projects, or reduce the cost at which they're doing the project. And that's been very exciting to me. And I'm keen to talk about the sustainability as a topic, but with a focus on digital twin as a base, which I truly believe is going to be the foundation for the sustainability which we are talking about. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Raj. And finally, Farizan, can I call on you to introduce yourself, please?
Thanks, Daniel. Yes, my name is Farizan. I'm based in Singapore, but predominantly I'm based in Rwanda. For the last, every 2 months, I'll go up to Rwanda. So I sit in the Africa network for green building councils under Rwanda as well as Tanzania. So most of my exposure are actually in developing countries, most developing countries in East of Africa. So we do a lot of enabling for policymakers in terms of infrastructure, as well as buildings. So we look at various strategies of onboarding them, and one of it is actually smart cities. There's a lot of hype, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of buzz on what we should do, how can we do it faster and better. But the main thing is the conduit of how to get there is always quite fuzzy. So I would say most in developing countries, they would like to actually have that across, but they can't. So what we do is actually, we try our best to close the gap between the financial capability as well as the technology. Both are equally important. So due to COVID, I'm back in Singapore. As you can see, I'm based in Singapore now. So I do hope to go back up there again sometime coming soon the year. Back to you, Daniel.
Thank you, Farizan, and thank you, everybody. What a diverse set of backgrounds and experiences we have. And just to reiterate for our participants, today's theme is Geospatial Technologies, a catalyst for sustainable infrastructure development. New technologies and processes are transforming the operational landscape of infrastructure projects across the region. With new demands on sustainability, accountability, and livability, there is a growing appreciation of geospatial tools enhanced by access to live data and its associated analytics. This panel discussion focuses on both the challenges and opportunities in resetting the parameters for a post-COVID-19 world, defining smart infrastructure in a regional context, applying innovative value-added solutions and innovations, placing geospatial at the heart of decision-making, and widening the industry talent pool. So a number of big topics we're going to cover today. So to kick things off, I thought we might begin with a working definition of sustainability, just for the benefit of our participants. The UN World Commission on Environment and Development states that sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And further to that, the Charter of the UCLA Sustainability Committee defines sustainability as the integration of environmental health, social equity, and economic vitality in order to create thriving, healthy, diverse and resilient communities for this generation and generations to come. The practice of sustainability recognizes how these issues are interconnected and requires a systems approach and an acknowledgement of complexity. So with that in mind, I wanted to first discuss sustainability in a regional context, a region as diverse as the Asia Pacific, with many states at vastly different stages of development. How can present day tools be used to evaluate impact of infrastructure projects on vulnerable communities and environments and ensure that infrastructure to support economic development is carried out with the sustainability agenda in mind? And Jerry, I thought that maybe you could kick this point off with a perspective on the ASEAN viewpoint from the perspective of surveying. Jerry, I think your mic may be on mute.
Thank you, Daniel. First of all, when we talk about ASEAN, we need to bear in mind that we have a very diverse playground, right? So we have 650 million population, but allow me to actually split ASEAN into 3 groups, right? So you have a group of parties who are in the developing phase. They have the will and they are deploying sustainable practices, but not yet pervasive. And you have another group of nations that have embarked on pilot phases, and they're getting the right stakeholders to agree on certain things and to collate together to ensure that parties, their interests are being aligned. And you have also another group that are working towards defining the scope of pilot phase. So it is definitely it has caught the attention of every ASEAN nation in regards to the sustainability aspects. So the good news is different phases have moved progress, and each time as ASEAN flag, as we gather together, as I shared in the beginning, when we come together, it is an exchange of ideas, of views, with the intent of how can we share and how can we collaborate and bridge the gap between the different groups of ASEAN nations banded together closer and closer. And it's also to recognize the talent or the skill sets within different member nations to make available and to support at the institutional level and even at a ground up level and even the universities and academia, right? So there have been progress, and also ASEAN flag has been a wonderful platform for us to actually come together in addressing these regards. And this is from the perspective of the ASEAN flag and the ASEAN region.
Okay, okay. Farizan, I thought I might get your view on this point as well. What do you see as a regional vision of a sustainable future, and how might this be changing?
I would say that, I mean, you can dream of everything. I mean, the best of the best, that would be the future. But what scares me a lot of the time is how are they gonna afford this future? Most of the time, I find that it's nice to have a dream, it's nice to have a vision, but most of them didn't quite think about affording it or the business case around it, and whether the readiness is there. And I see this all the time. For some reason, it seems like a competition almost. Everyone wants to be smart, everyone wants to be different. So I would say for the future, I think that thing needs to be addressed very, very carefully. Otherwise, we will not be in a boat that basically doing good, but actually we are sinking. So I think a lot of people would like to do that, and there's a lot of enablers out there. No short of, however, there is a level that we are all short of funding. So yes, I would say that. Daniel.
Okay, well, I see that you've got to the heart of the issue I was asking there. There's sort of massive inequality, or there are massive differences in development. What's your view on, I guess, mechanisms or approaches to this that you would recommend, or even considerations to keep in mind when addressing this issue that you've raised?
I would say the business case. So when you actually ask for funding, the business case has to be there. Giving an example, if you would like to go smart, you have the enablers there, but how are you going to reap revenue out from that particular infrastructure? It's not so simple, it's not so easy, it's not just a statement and to be continued by someone. So the revenue generation from each infrastructure needs to be either replaced with some mechanism. What we have done in Singapore is pretty well, but it might not work in other countries, trust me. It might not work in India, it might not work anywhere else. So it's very difficult to say one size to fits all. So doing PPP is, of course, definitely one of the way, but that's just half the battle done, because most of the time you have to live with it for the next 25 years. And we've got so many challenges in developing countries, Daniel.
Okay, all right, thank you, Farizan. We're going to come back to this topic on a slightly different angle, but in the interest of kind of moving on and trying to get through what I'm looking to cover today, I'm just going to change gears for the time being. Let's talk about a different type of sustainability at the moment, economic sustainability in the context of a global pandemic. When talking about infrastructure, the digitalization process is key to both keeping people safe, potentially in future, and also keeping projects on track and financially sustainable. How can geospatial technology assist with mitigating these impacts, both from a balance sheet perspective and in terms of actually an operational level, doing the work safely? I thought I might get Argoon's perspective on how smart technologies and a digitalization process can change decision-making at an organizational and project level in the context of a COVID-19 world.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, definitely the COVID thing to the digital people like me, it's somewhat, the good thing is really force everyone to transform digitally. It's never an excuse that I cannot use teleconference and I cannot use a cloud storage and so on, because this virus forces us to accept the new norm. Yeah, but this also amplified those parity issues like Jerry and Farizan mentioned earlier. It's different countries have different affordability, especially come to these digital aspects. Something like this morning in the GeoWorks announcements of the One Map 3D can be in the same region. It can be that advanced to that you get an abundance of data. You try to have the community to maximize the ecosystem to make produce a business case from those data. You have enough investments, upfront investment putting into that data preparation generation. But for other countries, cities, at the beginning, it's already not able to afford. So although we say we want to start from another direction, but it's tied together. And digital definitely can have help in certain aspects. And we also see there's innovations for the developing countries to rapidly bypass a lot of traditional things and directly jump to a more advanced situation and or low cost, and not necessarily to achieve the same thing with the same approach. There's innovation can help. On the other way, there's something like the cloud enable the computing power. It's something fundamental. Physically, you still need those resources to enable it. It's a gap. And like previous speaker mentioned, that a lot of governments will miss the enabler with the ultimate vision statements is to serve the people with a better infrastructure. So the got the path for like AI, like robotics, like blockchain, a lot of things is really helpful, really amazing, and really evolving very rapidly. But it's to us as the player in the industry, we also see that gaps. So the vision and the enabler, like digital is the enabler out of foundation to enable a lot of things to realize. But yeah, transportation planning, this population issues, social, economic stuff, these are working together. But some of the vision will to emphasize on those technology elements, and yeah, it's even missing the long-term sustainability of making revenue to make the self-sustainable, etc. So I would say it's a good side, it's also a bad side. It's being a digital people, I don't want to oversell that digital can resolve everything. It's an enabler role. It's dependent on the humans. So with a greater power, the people has a greater responsibility to use it.
Okay, all right, fantastic, thank you. Well, I wanted to get Raj's perspective on this as well. I guess, you know, with the tools such as the digital twin and the types of modeling that are available, I mean, let's say in this context, if more governments were using these kinds of tools, you know, there'd be certainly greater capability in terms of modeling interactions of populations. There could be vastly, you know, enhanced public health services as a result. But Raj, I wanted to get your perspective on how sustainability can become sort of central in the life cycle of a project, maybe with this context that we've just raised in mind.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I think I'll take the cue from what Argoon talked about, the digital enabler with the technologies. So I agree with the point that I would like to start with the point that the innovative technologies are there and it is evolving, and that's going to bring a lot more. But as our previous speakers pointed out, unless there is a capacity building in terms of process and the capacity building in the people to adapt these technologies, we may not be able to achieve what we want to achieve as a goal, right? And having said that, you know, I would like to set that as a bottom line. But at the same time, I want to touch upon how actually things are happening today, and how some of these technologies, like digital twin, which I want to focus, and helping the building the infrastructure with the sustainability in mind. Now, first of all, you know, if not Singapore, but I probably would speak about many of the Asian countries and the countries across the globe. We have different systems when it comes to infrastructure, which has to work in collaboration. But unfortunately, many of these things are working in silos. So we were thinking about a digital enabler. Digital twin comes into the game of enabling these and collaborating all this together and integrating all this together in one single platform. And where it has to help right from the planning stage, where we start winning the game of sustainability. So that's a crucial part of it. So your city planners or any plan has to start from the digital twin. And when I talked about that, I have to stress the fact that the geospatial is forming the foundation of the digital twin, which I'm talking about, which means you have to have the reality mesh of the whole area which we are in mind to develop, or the country or the city. And on top of that, you have to bring in all your different infrastructure models and digital enablement onto that. And once you have that, it is also important for you to make sure that all your different sensors and things like that has to be connected. So the connection of these things, or integration of these different systems, is a key for us to win the game of sustainability in terms of cost, in terms of resources, in terms of economy. Because I truly believe our economy and environment are sustained by infrastructure. So the more focus attention we pay to the infrastructure, the more we kind of going to gain in terms of achieving these goals. And I have to point out some of the recent studies done by McKinsey, what value which digital twin is going to bring into the table for people. They're talking about up to 8.5% of capital, percentage of reduction in the capital expenditure, and up to 40% reduction in the operational expenditure. And that's a benefit or the potential benefit which they are envisaging when it comes to the digital twin as a key factor putting in place to achieve these infrastructure sustainability goals.
Okay, thank you, Raj. So look, I wanted to bring with that in mind back to the region and disparities between economies and between states. And Jerry, I mean, you would be well aware of the variance in capability across the region in terms of readiness for digitalization. And Farizan, afterwards, I would like to get your view on this as well. I wonder what your view is, Jerry, on how this could best be managed. And do more developed economies have a responsibility for mentorship and capacity building, less developed economies?
Well, Daniel, as I shared in the beginning, so ASEAN basically consisting of 10 nations, it varies, right? It's a large difference in how we address things. But there's a single fundamental that actually streams throughout, If at the national level, the mandate has to come from the top, and this will have to involve policy support, the political will to make it happen, your financials, the money has to be there to want to get it happen, and also the appointment of a custodian. Who will this custodian be? And I think Farizan actually made that point, it's like there are many parties and many with certain interests, and I say it as a reality, not disrespectful, but if there is one custodian being responsible towards the digitization efforts and the mandate that comes from the top, and everybody falls in line. So we are looking at, be it whichever jurisdiction within the ASEAN nation, top down, having a single source of truth, serving the whole government, coordinating in multi-agencies, collating. Well, that would be a good, sustainable, tangible action that actually gets everybody in line on track. And while I was alluding to the public sector, Farizan also brought the point of PPP, public-private partnership. So that pertains to the public sector. Over the private sector as well, in large organizations, correct me if I'm wrong, Argoon, in a large organization as AECOM, if there are many stakeholders, you've got the architects, engineers, consultants, right, the designers, the planners. If every one of them were to just have their own flavor of data and content coming in and to run their own shop and to run their own little kingdom within a large organization, it is actually wastage. Right? And this in turn will be where Raj was actually sharing on the savings, the digitalization. It is well marshaled and is well coordinated. So there's one thing I also would like to put in over here. Now we talked about the digitalization, all right? Even in Singapore, we have challenges moving away from papers. We have been so digital, and we all know that somehow, despite, today's plans are not hand-drawn anymore, it is digitally drawn by a computer-aided drafting CAD package. Yet, after we have that CAD digitally drawn, we still need to print it out, A2, A1, A0 size, and submit paper, right? So within the context of sustainability, we will not talk about how many trees we are killing just to put an A0 or A1 size plan up, So the political will needs to be there, and be it whatever it can be from the different categories that I was sharing with you, apart the ASEAN nation, the 10 nation. These are the fundamental things that needs to be looked at, talked at. And even if we are not going to implement it at the national level, Singapore is small. So, we call it a smart nation, but in fact it's a smart city. But if you do it in a city, you're doing it in a nation. So it's called a smart nation. Just to clarify to all our those tuning in, right? And yeah, you can study at a small level at a pilot scheme, but the same fundamental applies to all. Political support, financial support, single agency custodian managing it, and being the single source of truth, dissemination, having a process that streams across various agencies, departments, and groups. And this applies for the public sector and even for large organizations as AECOM. Thank you.
I understand you've raised some other challenges there, and I know there's an alignment or an overlap here with, I guess, different regulatory environments in different jurisdictions, as you've mentioned, and here, open standards or conformity of standards could greatly assist with some of these efforts. I wanted to get Farizan's view on this point, just going back to the variance in capability, and whether there is responsibility. Typically in a theatre such as this, where there are different regulatory environments, and there's obviously private actors carrying out legal activities in different countries, and there's a growing corporate social responsibility movement, though. Corporates becoming more and more aware of their responsibilities, harmonizing with sustainable development goals, and so on. Farizan, I wanted to know your view on this. Do you think that there are some good mechanisms in place? Are we starting to see progress in this area?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with Jerry. I mean, all what he said about custodian. Actually, it's the same which part of the world you are in, you always will face that issue. Government do change, they centralize, they decentralize, and then things just didn't kind of get better. But nevertheless, I'm not going to speak on that. The thing about I would like to bring Daniel a little bit back on was the fact of mentorship. That's a good point, because where do we start at? And in my experience, I never really look at it as a nation or a city. I always think about it. I mean, when I was in Panama, I always look at it as a mayor thing. I don't know why, but I always look at a mayor thing, because mayor, they take care of their own district, their own space. And some mayors, they would like to enable that more. And I think that's within a grasp of what we can do. Then from there, what I'm going to say next is that we can always scale that or duplicate that or drop it if it doesn't work. I don't know, depends on the countries, right? So if it works, fine. If it doesn't, then you drop it. And the other thing is, of course, you don't have to do all the sustainability smart cities effort all at one go. Here, I'm talking about like most of the things now are wireless, SIM cards and Wi-Fi. Some of them don't even have a proper ICT infrastructure to actually dream about it. Yet when they talk about it, I was like, how are you going to get there when your bandwidth is not even there? So I guess they jump too much, they leap too much. And that's sort of like, we didn't see practical. I mean, I'm a very practical and logical person. I couldn't see that happening. So in spite of like whatever that they want, but in terms of sustainability, the small hanging fruits are the ones that I look out for. In particular, the small hanging fruits are like water pipeline that burst. Okay, and you put a sensor there, and I know that water pipeline actually burst. Okay, I know energy tariffs, energy theft rather than tariff because of transmission line. things like that are more important for me than, okay, that would be like phase 0 before you go to phase 1 and 2. So if you can't fix phase 0, water pipeline bursts, energy tariffs, security, you do not need to work it up. You can use digital twin, as what Vash pointed, and build it up, as you go along. But smart with, and all those helps sustainability. All of those help sustainability. Just imagine, Daniel, all of you. I mean, if somebody were to steal a lot of electricity tariff and you don't detect it, what will happen next is that you're going to say, oh, there's outages everywhere. So what happened to those outages is you're going to develop or demand more energy, more water, and it will never end. And that's when I feel sustainability in smart cities really help a long way.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic, Farizan, because I wanted to talk about smart cities next and sustainability on a city level. Maybe with, let's say, a matrix like the SDGs in mind. So smart cities clearly would have advantages in the environmental goals, the energy goals. There may be synergies with other targets as well. I thought maybe Argoon could give us an example or an overview of some emerging technologies in this area with some examples.
Okay, sure. So I also want to relate to the mentorship topic.
Please.
Yeah. So I personally also have my role is a regional role in Southeast Asia region and based in Singapore. So that's from an enterprise, it's also our aim is Singapore as the hub and propagates our experiences and our technologies to the wider Southeast Asia region. It's always the aim. But we're also very cautious every time you need to customize to suit the local situation and even to pull the client back. They are hearing the things, they want to be something like that, and we need to pull it back and also helping them to figure out how to make it work. So not pulling too much back, but also how to make it work. Things like PPP and things like how to make financial and master planning work. That's my colleagues are taking care. Speaking from the technical side, the digital part, how practically we do that. It's more, also I'm a more logical and hands-on person, so how to make that work. So once we say we got the technology, digital technology, it's actually that break down into 3 things. One is the data, one is the tool, and one is the process, the logic. So the logic things is something, if we develop something, work in like auto recognition of the images in Singapore, the good thing of digital is so flexible and scalable. It really can be duplicated. That is less social, cultural difference things. You need to adapt a little bit, but it's replicable. For data, it's always the biggest gap. So something works in Singapore, like even you get one map, you got one map 3D, POV, SOA, every agency's got a bundle of data when you kickstart your railway design, for example. But once you go to Manila, Jakarta, the first immediate things, you get no data. So like you do a meal, there's a cook, the chef, and there's an ingredient, and there's that tool help you to do the cook. You don't have the ingredient. But that thing is, we found some examples we can overcome by crowdsourcing, like OpenStreetMap. So I'm really glad this morning heard from SLA, their One Map 3D is based upon open technology instead of a private part. Sorry, but sorry, Raj is here. Yeah, but it's yeah. So that's a way that to make it affordable about data, and about the share of the process is replicable, and about the technology tool to make it work. It's back to something that I said, the computing power. You need a cloud to make some really real-time feedback to you as a result. You need that infrastructure, still physical infrastructure. That implements some limits, but also opportunity because that elastic scalable elements. So you don't need to like host your whole server by yourself, that you can subscribe to Amazon, to Azure, to Microsoft, to get that at least bare minimum to serve the purpose. So in terms of digital, I do see the opportunity, and it's quite, it's bigger than other aspects, than other discipline. I mean, and for digital, it's I shouldn't say easier. It's some more opportunity to amplify using Singapore as a hub and propagate that experiences to the wider region.
Okay. Raj, I wanted to get your take as well. You know, especially with regard to smart cities, how can we optimize sensors and sensor networks with sustainability in mind here?
I think that's an interesting part. Today, even if you take, I believe in Singapore, there are huge amount of sensors working, even to, I am to understand, even managing the lifts in across different vertical buildings. I mean, you have a lot of high-rise buildings, and the lifts are being managed well, even sensors being connected to that to understand how it is actually working across. So I think the sensors, even for example, I pick up from Farizan, who talked about the pipe break. So what's happening is basically, if you talk of the pipe break, you know, suddenly say there is a stormwater drain which breaks, and you have sensors which will tell you, like, you know, how much water is, you know, kind of coming out of that. And probably we may have a system of stormwater drain network which will, you know, kind of help to drain those things. But we don't know, do we have enough capacity of that network to drain that? So that's question number one which comes in. Now, question number two, even if we have drain, how much capacity, and do we have enough pumping systems to pump this water out? That's the question number two. Now, if you want to pump, you know, those pumping systems are in the vicinity of this break. The other question which is also coming up, okay, do we have enough energy around to run these pumping systems? So these are the questions which is coming in unanswered, most probably in the current situation, if not in Singapore, in most of the countries, for example, or the region. So that's what need to be addressed when you really want to bring those things in order and keep them sustainability in mind. So back to sensors. Of course, sensors is been there. It is providing data, and that data is being analyzed. But again, I have to stress the fact, if you want to basically make the best out of those things, those near real-time information has to reflect onto a system like digital twin of the real city scale for people from different walks of life or different disciplines, engineers from different disciplines. So you have engineers addressing the water issue, engineers addressing the stormwater issue, engineers addressing the transmission issue. So each of them have to look at a single platform, digital twin platform, on which the sensor information come in, so that they get access to the data reflecting on the same, you know, location, so that they can take informed decisions quickly to that problems. If we don't do that, it's going to be a problem again. So if you ask me the question that way, I think integration of these sensors to the mainstream system is a key to address many or solve many problems. And I believe digital twin is forming the real platform to have such integration with multi systems and sensors. The other factor I would touch upon, the open system, which Argoon pointed out.
Mm-hmm.
And nevertheless, Bentley, you know, we have started building up our platforms, which allows people, anybody, to develop their own application on top of our platform, which is based on open source things. So that's a power at which you know, the technology can provide, and that's what I agree with Argoon in saying that digital is something replicable. Maybe a minor tweak required for region to region, but it is replicable. So that's what I have to say on that.
Thank you, Raj. I'm glad you addressed the open issue too. I know that Bentley is starting to embrace open standards and technologies now also. Now we're getting quite short on time, so I quickly wanted to throw to Farizan to get your take on this. In terms of zero carbon targets, and also specifically how this applies to developing economies.
I would say, of course, if you look into GHG 1, 2, and 3 emissions, decarbonizing the grid is, of course, the most wonderful. But it's hard to get there without proper planning. You need to plan well, and you need to compute the demand well. But before you can compute, say, the city or the mayor, the place, you need to lower down the amount of demand. How do you lower down the amount of demand? Is to look into the building sector. So everything ties up back. Everything just ties it back up. But people don't necessarily approach it from that. For some reason, baffled reason, they always approach it from the end result, and then they say, oh, we need more, and then we produce more. And I think the world is going into zero energy, zero carbon, or smart cities. And I think that approach will work well if you start small. You master the skill a bit better. You put in relative sensors. The other thing I like to follow up on what Raj mentioned was this digital twin. People come up to me, they said, oh, I want digital twin. And my answer is digital twin of what? I mean, like, can you like explain what digital twin of what, you know? So using that word sometimes, people who comes up to me, I always ask, what exactly do you want this to be? You have to know, you have to define. You know, if you don't know and you don't define, get a consultant, get someone like Raj or anyone here to actually help you to determine what you need. So that has a lot to do with success or failure of sustainability cities and smart cities. A lot of it hinges on that. And so the only thing I would say before you start spending money onto buying things, I think that has to be addressed from the beginning, Daniel.
Okay, thank you. Jerry or Raj, did you want to respond to Farizan's points there?
Yeah, I would like to echo what Farizan has shared. You know, digital twin can mean a lot of things, right? But then also what is important is also to consider a fit for purpose. If you really want the digital twin of everything, what is everything, right? So can one consultant tell you what is everything? Well, the consultant can tell what is everything from his or her perspective, right? So I think the important thing, what I particularly like about the Singapore model, our country, the Singapore model is we embark on pilot projects. We scope it out and we recognize that, okay, there are a lot of things we do not know, but there are 3 key things we need to know. And let's prod towards that 3 things. And then also from there, it's like a fit for purpose. We've got this amount of money, so let's do it at this amount of scale, right? So I think it's a process, and also a note to regulators is be realistic with the scope of pilot that you want to embark, because we are all learning. And also it's perfectly fine at the end of the learning process, we realize that we got it wrong, because it's also part of learning, right? And I think that this is something that is important. We are embarking on things that are new, smart cities, smart nation, right? We do not have a lot of workable and successful examples. You will hear about the successful examples because they are on the media, on paper, social media, everything, but failures? No, I don't think people will share failures, right? Yeah, so it requires a mature mindset. It requires stakeholders that are really committed and willing to see change. And then we will be able to progress in this regard. Yeah, that's my take on it.
Thanks, Jerry. I'll just quickly give Raj a chance to respond as well, because I've got one question from an attendee that I'd like to get to before we have to finish at 5.
Okay. Yeah, so I think I do agree with Farizan and Jerry in terms of terminology. Digital jargons are many, so let's not go by that. But it's important to know what you really want to achieve. And if the more efficient you're planning and the more better you plan at the beginning, the better you are at in achieving your results. So that's a key. Number 2, I would stress on the point of scalability. Anything you start, you begin somewhere, don't sit quiet, but you can begin somewhere and keep scaling it up. You have to look at anything to be implemented on a scalable basis. That is another key thing I would like to touch upon. Back to digital twin, Again, this is not something new. In 1970s, this has been put into use. Think about a situation, Apollo 13 has been launched and it has got into a problem. And NASA had a digital twin of the whole mission. And they kind of rehearsed how to rectify that problem, which is, hundreds of kilometers away in the orbit. So that's a power at which can solve problems. But I think it's important to understand what do you really want to achieve and what do you really want to go with, and put the process and the system in place in such a way that it is happening in a scalable way. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. Thank you, Raj. Very quickly, you've got a question here from Mika in Finland. As construction processes and geospatial data management are becoming digital, the demand for understanding the world of coordinates and geodetic reference systems as part of the digital models has increased. How do you see the role of professional surveyors in this digital transformation, and how their professional know-how could boost the transformation towards a more sustainable future? So maybe, Jerry, if you quickly want to kick that response off.
Whenever I see coordinate system and geodetic reference, well, that is our playground. First of all, I really hope that the professional surveyors and the qualified people are actually embarking and learning and embracing digital models, embracing new things, because there has been a saying that our profession, we are not embracing well IT, right? I would like to correct that. Our generation, my generation, I'm not going to reveal my age, for 30 years in the industry, we have embraced it. We were being taught about it in the universities, and the use of IT infrastructure, system, database development, AI has been there. So back to that question is to the professional bodies and the government agencies, to have a mandate or a clause that says that anything involving geodetic references, coordinate systems, have a stakeholder that has to be a professional, a competent professional to be involved in that loop. And together, the modelers or the parties providing the modeling services or entities that wants to involve in projects involving coordinate systems and reference frames, need to have on board an expertise in this regard, and also with track records to back him or her competency. And I would say that that would be a good way. And it's about communicating and educating the process. Because without this, you are going to have very, very costly mistakes. Yes.
Thank you, Jerry. Does anyone else want to comment on Mika's question?
For me, just happen to have a 360 camera next to me, so pick it up. I think it's back to previous speaker saying, I think Jerry also mentioned that digital twin, but it's not digital twin. It's the problem you're going to solve. So something is not necessarily you require that precise data. And nowadays, like drone image, like these kind of 360 camera, is only the cheaper one is $100 US. So that's already can address a lot of needs. Like we cannot go to the site so often in this COVID period. So we send a person with clearance and go to the site, capture the image, and every 3 days, and we see the progress of it and reduce the contact and safety distance and so on. So in something is going really advanced and really precise, but there's also something you can find a more economic way to solve this thing.
All right, fantastic. Well, I think we're getting very close to the end of our session. I have one more question here for Raj that it's in a similar area. How we might make geotechnical engineering more sustainable across multiple industry applications.
Yeah, I think that's a key aspect. Geotechnical engineering is the most resource intensive of all civil engineering disciplines. And it can significantly influence the sustainability of infrastructure development because of its early position in the construction process. So you are dealing with a huge amount of underground stuff, right? Your lithography, your geological structures, that forms the foundation of what you're going to start in terms of building an infrastructure. If you don't understand well and model it well and able to visualize it pretty much ahead in time, then what's happening is majority of these excavations, and you don't know what is the material composition underneath, can cause in huge amount of pollutions and hazards around that. So I really see that is that's very important for people to focus on to before even starting and a project like the infrastructure project. And you have to work through some framework. I mean, that's important. It's not just kind of go and identify something. You have to follow a sustainability assessment framework in geotechnical engineering, and that is to based on multi-criteria, so as to be successful in that. That's what I would like to say.
Thank you, Raj. Well, I think we need to finish now. So I'd like to thank everybody for their time and all their contributions to such a spirited discussion, and everybody who's attended the session. And I'll hand over back to Rupert.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for moderating. Brilliant effort, everybody. Thank you, Jerry, Farizan, Argoon, and Raj, and Vanessa for hosting. It's been a really stimulating conversation. It's great to do it without PowerPoints, and it'll be even better to meet in person very soon, preferably before Geo Connect Asia next March, but we stay in contact. And as soon as we can have face-to-face meetings, it would be great to get back into that world. So thank you, everybody. It's been really good. And thanks for attending and taking your time out on this busy afternoon.